that Jesus left the people to get off by himself. And he went on the boat and crossed the Sea of Galilee. And what happened? They knew where he's going. They beat him there. And when he got there, he just was amazed with all the people that had gathered. And so we're going to look at, review real quickly, the 5,000 were fed out of this incident. And then we're going to see Jesus walking on the water and some healing at the Gennesaret. So he gets ashore, and we see that Jesus, it says, he felt compassion because they were like a sheep without a shepherd. And we're really introduced to Jesus here as, yes, he's a king, isn't he? Because when he's Christ, that means he is prophet, priest, and king, the anointed one. But he's also a kingly shepherd. And he's a shepherd, and he talks about himself as that in the book of John. I am the good shepherd that lays his life down for the sheep. But notice this idea of this compassion when he sees the people. And as Christians, I would suggest that we will have the same kind of heart. When we see people lost and wandering, it unsettles us, and we want to do something about it. And so how did he respond when he sees these people as a sheep without a shepherd? What's the first thing he did? I want you to note. What? Well, after he felt that, what's the first action, though? Taught. Now, you might think the first response is, well, I need to take care of their physical needs. I need to, provide something for them. But he teaches, because central to them being lost is not knowing the truth, or not knowing about God, or just not knowing. And so he met their spiritual needs first. You see that? He taught them. And obviously, many things went on for many hours, because later in the night, his disciples said, hey, let's dismiss them so they can go eat. Was this a desperate rescue situation at this time? No, it's not like him healing people that were demon-possessed or blind. They could have left and got food for themselves. But Jesus, testing his disciples, said, you feed them. They go, what do you mean? How are we going to do that? Well, he finds out how many fish and the loaves they have. And how many were that? 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He had them sit down in groups, and we talked about that. And then he fed them all, because he just kept on giving and giving. And then they gathered up 12 baskets full when it was left and done. So here's just kind of a review of where it is. We talk about Jesus. Is there a balance in Christ, the kingly shepherd, between resting and working? He tried to achieve that. That's why he's going there. And later in chapter 7, we'll see perhaps some more of that. There's a balance between, just all work and no rest. And, of course, maybe too much rest and no work. Is that our same challenge? And now I know it's summer and it's fun to go out on vacation, but does our work spiritually ever stop? Do we ever take a day off as being a Christian? I would hope not. It's just it's who we are. And then, of course, when you think of Jesus as a king, we have to think of him as a shepherd. He's moved by our needs, isn't he? He's a shepherd that has compassion, and that's why he acts. I've said before that when we read that God is love, and love is this attitude that causes you to act in someone's best interest, God cannot do nothing. He has to always do something when he sees us in need, when he hears our cries. Why? Why does he have to do something? Because God is love. He cares. And we want to emphasize that again. Also, he did feed them spiritually, but he also fed them physically. Now, it's because, one, they were hungry, but it shows as a witness to who he was. He is the Lord of quantity here. He is the king over the physical realm. And we see that, and he's going to demonstrate that he is the I am. Now, what event took place in a lonely place in the Old Testament? Because remember, Jesus is departing to a lonely place, a desolate place. Of course, all the people get there. What happened similarly in the Old Testament? Moses, first of all, and the children of Israel, where are they? Where do they find themselves? In the wilderness, right? It's a desolate place. And does God feed them? Yes. And showing them that I will meet your needs. I'll take care of you. And God, his covenant name is what? Jehovah, which means Yahweh or I am. Is Jesus duplicating the same event really here? He's demonstrating that I and the Father are one. We're equal here. Now, lest that's past, they don't see that, he's going to actually say that. And they're going to get the message, because notice what happens next. Now we're in chapter 6 and verse 45. And what's our operative word that we see over and over in the book of Mark? Immediately. All right. And so it just moves on fast. And immediately he made, and you can't dismiss these words and read them too quickly. He made his disciples. Does your Bible say anything other than made? Constrained. I like that. All right. It's the King James. Is that what you're going to say, Nancy? He constrained his disciples to get in the boat ahead of him to go to the other side to beside it, while he himself was sending the multitude away. What did your Bible say other than sending? Dismiss. All right? These are strong words in the original language. When he makes the disciples go, he says, get out of here, go. And he's dismissing the crowds. Why all of a sudden this urgent action to get the disciples out of here, to rid the people, and then Jesus goes up on the mountain to pray? Well, we don't know in this context, and this is one of the times where it really helps that we can look at a parallel account and see what another gospel writer said. And while we've not been doing that in this study, because this is not a study of all the gospels, it's a study of Mark, this time it's really important that we do it. The word made is to compel with urgency. It's a pressing necessity. So let's look at John chapter 6, and we'll get the understanding of what is going on where Jesus takes such strong action. So John chapter 6, we see the same feeding of the 5,000. All right? And look at verse 14. When I said that people got the message that he is more than just a man, when therefore the people saw the sign which he had performed, what was the sign? Turning 5 loaves and 2 fishes into enough to feed everyone. That he had performed, they said, this is of truth the prophet who has come to the world. Are they convinced that Jesus is the Messiah they've been waiting? Well, notice, therefore, Jesus, perceiving they were intending to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. Oh, Mark, I wish you would have put that in there, but now I understand. Why did Jesus get rid of the crowds, send the disciples away, and then go up on the mountain by himself? They wanted to make him king. Well, wait, isn't that what he's here for? He is to become a king. Why do you say no? Okay, and not a physical king, all right? Now, their idea that the Messiah would come, the Christ, and restore Israel into its former glory. They would have dominion over the land, kick the Romans out. And they said, this is the man. Look at what he's doing. So at this moment, they're going to force him to become their king. Can you see him maybe elevating him, take him into Jerusalem and say, here it is. Now, is that what Jesus intended? Is he going to have anything to do with it? No. And unlike people today, if he was a false teacher or a false prophet, what would he have done with this occasion? All right, take advantage of it. Let's go. But he forces them away, goes up on the mountain to do what? Isn't that interesting? This is perhaps the height of his success as far as the populace, the people. Now, success only in that they recognize he's not just a man, he's something, he has to be of God. But it's not where he wants it to go. And it's not that he's going to ride this. He says, no, I got to stay connected to my God. I got to make sure it's his will and not my own. And Well, we don't know what he's praying about. Now, he went up and prayed before he picked the 12, didn't he? Was that a serious occasion? We're going to pick 12 men that's going to take the gospel to the world after Christ leaves. That's a very, very serious event. This one equals it because at this moment, he goes up the mountain to pray by himself. So there's another balance between the shepherd and king, between work and rest and what? Staying connected with his God and praying. And maybe it's just like, Lord, open their eyes so they understand what my message is. It's about a spiritual kingdom, not a physical. Maybe it was just, don't let me get caught up in this. I don't know. But he said, my will is to do, or my food is to do the will of the Father. And he had to keep praying for that. All right? And that's why Hebrews said he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. It wasn't always easy. How do you get through it? By prayer. Prayer, prayer, prayer. Time with God. All right? Do you see that? So he goes up to the mountain to pray. And now we fast forward. It's evening. The boat's in the middle of the sea. We're back in Mark chapter 6 and verse 47. And then he's alone on the land. And he sees them straining, it says in the text, at the oars. Is this an emergency situation? I hear a yes and a no. What? Someone was saying something? Is it yes or no? Well, okay, let's read it all. He was see them straining at the oars, for the wind was against them about the fourth watch of the night. So he came to them, walking on the sea, and he intended to pass them by. Is this an emergency situation where they need to be rescued? No, if they've been against adverse winds before. These are fishermen, largely, most of them, right? What does it mean they're straining? They're working hard because the wind is contrary and they got to row extra hard just to get where they're going. But the Lord says, you're okay. Not like earlier when they wake him and said, Lord, don't you care that we're perishing? Don't you care? Of course he cares. That's when he woke up and calmed the sea, right? This time, there's no emergency, but they're working. Is that okay sometimes to work as a Christian? Sometimes to strain and say, well, Lord, don't you care? Yes, he cares, but you can handle it and he knows it. I won't say get over it, but grow up. You know, we have to just do what we have to do. And then cry to the Lord when we really, really need help, right? He's going to walk on by. JC. Oh, that's about, I want to say 4 or 6 in the morning. I don't remember if it's 4 or 6.
So he sent them away and they're still out rowing?
Yeah, it's...
It sounds like they didn't make it very far. Could you see them from where he was?
Now, let's back up. You know, it's a good observation you're making. We don't know when he fed them. It was late, right? We don't know how long that feeding took. So we don't know when he sent them away. But yes, it's, you know, it's the Sea of Galilee, 6-7 miles across, 13 miles length. They could have been out there several hours, not getting very far, right? So yes, they're probably tired too. Yes.
It seems interesting to me that the phrase he meant to walk by, he's doing something miraculous that at first instance was not meant to be seen by anybody. As he's walking on the water, he didn't mean, he just meant to keep on going by.
Well, yeah, I understand when you say that, but notice this phrase, he came to them. So it seems the text indicates he wants them to see him. So, but I understand what you're saying. That's why I think this word would help. But he's going to pass by them. They're going to see him. All right, go ahead. Yeah, right. Hi, how's it going? See you on the other side. You know, almost that kind of thing. Now, what is amazing, the fact that it's 3 o'clock. See, I said, JC, I said 2 or 4. It's 3. I already wrote it down. Sorry. No wonder I couldn't remember right, because it was neither 2 nor 4. But when they saw him walking on the sea, now we're in verse 47, they supposed it was a ghost. Is that reasonable? Yes. Now, I don't know why they're so superstitious, thinking that anything that doesn't make sense has to be of the spirit world. Of course, it shows they believe in the spirit world, right? But they think it's a ghost. And they cried out. Now, what are they? Are they crying out to the ghost, or are they just crying out? Ah! Or maybe they're saying to the ghost, don't come to us. I don't know what they're saying. But they're startled and they're afraid, right? Because it says they all saw him and were terrified. Now again, you're working, you're tired, you've been straining. I used that word, I defined it here earlier about straining. It means to have torment and toss and vex. They're really working hard just at these oars. And when you're tired and you're exhausted, are your emotions on edge too, as well? And then they look up and they see this ghost coming at it, so they scream. That's what that word means. It's a loud, it's a verbal. It's not like, oh no, it's ah, something like that. And you put yourself in the place, and that's when immediately. See, Jesus suddenly, let's just let them be scared for a while. I'll just walk on by and just see what happens. No, immediately he speaks to them. Here's the good shepherd. And what does he say? Take courage. It is I. Don't fear. That means he knows they're afraid. They can take courage, but the courage is going to be found in understanding it's me. Now, we don't want this to pass over us. When he says it is I, literally saying, I am. You look at the verb, it's just a Greek verb for saying I am. It's me. That's what he's saying. Now, what does that remind you of? God the Father, who introduced himself to Moses as I am. Now, we've been talking about faith, so we have to challenge ourselves again. Faith has three parts. What are they? The cognitive, that I mentally assent or agree with the facts that Jesus has to be the Christ, there is a God. A lot of people have that, and that's really relatively easy to come to that point. What's the second part of faith? When it moves from the head and it's just mental persuasion to the heart, we start trusting him. You trust him when it physically doesn't make sense, but you trust him because all the evidence proves that he's trustworthy. That's the difficult part. Do these disciples, these 12, grasp mentally that he is the Son of God? Yes. What they struggle with mightily is letting this move from their head to the heart where they start to trust him. We see it displayed over and over when he says, you feed them. They go, what? With 5 loaves and 2 fishes, have them sit down. Do they understand what he's able to do? Yes and no. They know he can do miraculous things because they've seen it. But do they understand he's going to do it now? Now, I don't get that, but then I look at myself, my life. Do we all acknowledge Jesus can do miracles? Do we all acknowledge today that he is in charge of everything, Lord of Lords and King of Kings? We all say that. It's kind of our mantra. We just preach that. But do all of us have a problem? This faith gets stuck in our throat. We don't want to swallow it. And we have a hard time believing that he cares enough for us as a loving shepherd to take care of us. It's transferring this knowledge into our own hearts where, yes, he is the same God, the same Christ, and I don't have to worry. I don't know why that is, but I guess we're no different than the 12 who actually saw it physically. We have the same problem digesting it spiritually. But that's what he wants to see happen to us, that we start trusting him. Roy.
I don't know if they had any idea that he produced lots of food.
Say that again.
They had faith in him, but it might have surprised them that, oh, he made all this food, now we can do it.
Now we can what?
Provide more food.
Yeah. Okay.
I have no doubt that they know it helped him, but by bringing more food?
Right? And it's transferring those type of miracles to other parts of our life too. The word courage means to be emboldened from within. Yes?
Do you think that this is a result of his praying to the Father might be the result of his prayer, and that he's trying to get them to get it about, him being the I am.
Yeah.
That God, the Father said, get out there and give it to him again about being
Yeah.
I am.
It's hard to say, connect those dots, because we don't know what the prayer was, but we know this is his goal all the time, is to train them, to teach them about this. So yes, there has to be obviously a connection, but especially when he's intending to pass them by. That's what's very interesting, isn't it? There's a plan here, yes.
The wife's question is, but if the two of us, if their heart was hardened,
Where does it say? Right here, right? He got in the boat with them. That's interesting. I just want to address what Roy and Marvin said. He got in the boat with them, and the wind stopped, and they were utterly astonished. And again, why are they utterly astonished? I mean, you think you get to a point you're like, oh yeah, this is the norm. When Christ is with us, miraculous things happen. But I guess when you see a miracle, you're always astonished. And maybe that's all of us. When we worry, then it works out, we're amazed. Like, oh, God, you were faithful to me again. Oh, really? Why are we surprised again? But we don't cease to be surprised, don't we? Because, well, we're just the same. And here it says, here's the challenge. So when I say they have it in the head, but it gets stuck on their throat and it's hard to move their heart, here it is. They had not gained any insight. From what? The instant of the loaves. See, they haven't thought through it mentally. What's going on here? Because when you do enough meditation thinking on it, all of a sudden it moves your heart like, I'm in the presence of someone that really cares. I don't have to worry anymore, period, about anything, period. See, they haven't got that insight. Now they can, yes.
Yeah, when those trials come, discouragement is our first reaction. When we see it, it's like, woe is me. I got to go through some trial. I got to go through some of this. But then we quickly see how Jesus, if we just trust and have patience, he's using it to shape and mold us to become better as a child of God.
Well, certainly, right.
But it's
Yeah.
hard when you're going through it because it's each of our challenge.
That's right.
Every time we go through a difficult time, it's trusting in him, praying to him, and asking him to get us through whatever it is.
Yeah,
And we come out at the other end stronger, better.
that's right. Because by nature, trials are not fun. Right. Yeah, but that's the only way it teaches us something. So yes, very good. Yes.
Stood out to me was that when you mentioned they didn't understand about the loaves, or mine, the ESV says they don't understand it, I suppose what you got there. And it wasn't that they were astonished as walking on water. They were scared and terrified, but then, when they recognized Jesus, it's Jesus. It's like, he's done this before. They weren't astounded necessarily about the walking in water. It was about they astonished that they didn't understand the loaves, what it says.
Well, or is it connecting to the wind stopping? It says the wind stopped and they're astonished.
They said, I don't know, maybe it's
Yeah.
punctuation in there.
Right. All right. And somewhere where you put punctuation will make the difference. But look at the whole event. They think it's a ghost, but who is it? It's Jesus walking on the water. What? How can you walk on the water? I mean, this hadn't happened before. It'll happen again later, right? Second of all, gets in the boat. What happens immediately? The wind stopped. So I think that gives rise to this whole event. They're astonished. And maybe it goes all the way back to the food, but this is a current event right now. And it says the reason they're so astonished from total fear to total astonishment is because they hadn't gained any insight, and let's address this idea of their heart being hardened. Now, when we think of a heart being hardened, we think, well, that's a sinful condition, all right? And it depends on the context. And I don't have time to look at all the texts where this phrase is used. But when it says someone's heart is hardened, It just means exactly that. It hasn't been opened up to the truth of who Christ is, and hasn't been opened up and made more pliable by the word. And so they're resisting. They're not gaining insight. They're just closed-minded. But the more you're with Christ, what happens? It opens more and more and more and more and more and more. All right? It's used in Matthew 19 about... when it's talking about divorce, when he says, well, why did Moses then tell us to write a bill of certificate? And Jesus said it's because of the hardness of your heart. It doesn't mean they were evil. It's just they weren't godlike. God was a God of forgiveness, and rather than divorce, he wants you to reconcile and stay together, but he understands you're not like me. You ought to be. You can be. But at this moment, you're not. And right now, are these evil men? No. Are they sinful men? Well, no more than any of us. But these are handpicked by Christ. When it says they're hardened, they just haven't got there yet. Does that make sense? Hardened? And to a degree, are all of our hearts hardened? And hopefully it's become more pliable and open to God and Christ as we grow in faith. Yes? Yes, and we have to spend some time talking about this perhaps in chapter 7 when he's going to look at the issues of the heart. When you get the bad things out of the heart, our heart becomes more open and less hardened to what is good. And that's what Jesus said. The real issue is the heart. Everything points to the heart. Yes? That's right. And it's almost this hardest heart. We display it. No, I got to work this out on my own. I got to fix this. No, we do ever say no to Jesus verbally. But we do it by refusing to pray, refusing to fall before him and seek help from others. All the things he tells us to do, be anxious for nothing, pray for everything, then the peace of God. All the things we know mentally we're supposed to do, well, that doesn't apply to me. I got to work this out. I got to strain some more, right? I got to row. So to that degree, our heart's hardened. And that's why the apostles later said, Lord, increase our... Is it they're saying mental or trust? Trust. We need to start just trusting in you. And when you trust, you just give yourself over totally. There's no more anxiety. There's no more bitterness. Christians that are bitter and angry don't trust God. They're still trying to work things out in their own life, work out relationships or whatever. I mean, any malady you have spiritually, it's really a lack of trust is what it is, because of a hard heart. Now, we're growing in that. Yes.
Reminds you of Pharaoh in Egypt.
Yeah.
He was trying to work it out on his own. He didn't recognize the God he used.
Well, a heart can get so hardened that you're totally resistant. The word can't affect you anymore. All right? Okay. All right. And let God work in our lives. That's right. He says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. All right. I just want you to see this, okay? They're overwhelmed. They hadn't put things together. That's the word insight. Hardened means to cover with a thick skin, like calloused, all right? And I know that through life, we learn to protect ourselves because of all the unfaithfulness of friends and family, relationships. We learn to not trust others, right? We learn to be cynical. And we learn not to be open, be closed as protective. And does over time, living in this world, cause our heart to be calloused? And when I'm saying callous, when you work a long time, what happens to your hands? They get callous so it doesn't hurt as bad and you can continue to work. The problem is the world can callous our hearts. And when we come to the shepherd, the loving shepherd, he's asking us to open our heart. And that's scary. People don't want to do that because trusting will just get you hurt. But he says, you can trust me. Isn't that what he's saying? You can trust me. So, there we go. He goes to Gennesaret. They cross over. They came to sea. They moored the shore. Immediately, the people recognized him. They ran about from the whole country, carried their sick pallets to where he was. Why? Because they understood what Peter says, cast all your anxieties upon him. What does that leave out? Well, absolutely none. Why would you cast all your anxieties upon him? Because he cares for you. He's a compassionate, loving shepherd. So they're all come to him, and then we'll finish this chapter. Whenever he entered the village or city, the countryside, they're laying the sick in the marketplaces, imploring him that they might touch the fringe of his cloak. And as many as touched it, he was cured. Can you imagine the response of the people and just the buzz about Jesus of Nazareth that's going on? Especially when you had lifelong infirmities and you're healed just with a touch. Just amazing, isn't it? So this is faith that moves to the heart, that moves to the hand. Why are they bringing their people that are sick? Not on a whim, not on just a dream, but they know he can do something for them. That's why they're demonstrating their faith in their action. All right, we're done here. Anything? Yes?
It seems like maybe it was for this time to make Jesus known and his divinity known more, but it seems there was an awful lot of sick.
Yeah.
Was it more, is there any indication that there was more than normal at this time?
Wow, I couldn't answer that. I think you go third world country, which is what it was probably, as far as in Galilee, anywhere you go, and there's going to be lack of medical care, and there's going to be a lot of sick people. People died at a younger age. We see that today. But let's listen to the announcements at any given time. Are there sick people in this congregation? All the time. Yes. So it's probably just the norm. Yes.
The three phases of faith.
Yes.
Understand trust and action. The trust and action thing is kind of tricky because we can trust in God, but there's also part we have to do our part. Keeping in balance. Am I doing my
Sure.
part, or am I trying to not is me doing my part taking away from my trust in God? I think that's a tricky balance.
Well, right. Because you can fight the oars all day, but that's not faith. But faith without works is dead because my actions come out of my faith. This does not make sense to me. Lord, you told me to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. See, I trust you. Trying to work out your own salvation, you're like, this is the only thing that makes sense to me, so I'm going to ignore you and do it my way. That's what you're addressing. We don't want to do that, but we do want to act in faith and do what he says because we trust him. Yeah, just saying. I'm sorry?
Powers. So Jesus has already sent them out, given them authority
Yes?
to do things. And then here with the 5,000, he tells them to give them food. At this point, they don't understand it. They don't understand that they can do things. And I'm assuming potentially here it's one of those commandments. Once you've been given authority to do something, why don't we
Yeah.
see fit? So he tells them to give them food. They don't understand how. That doesn't make sense in worldly aspects. You can't just command
Yes.
it to appear. Then, as they're struggling against the wind, it's again a physical thing. I know how to row a boat across this lake, this ocean sea, right? But they know how to do it physically. And against this wind, they're stirring, they're not making any progress. They're not accepting faith. God told me I'm going to get across. I can get across. Whether miraculously or not,
Right.
they've already seen it, the capability of calming the
Right.
seas. But again, he thought of them having powers, the authority given to them already.
Yeah.
When they're told to get across the sea, they don't understand this food, they don't understand the sea, they don't understand what God is, and that there isn't any limitations.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the healing.
Yeah.
We see that later on, Paul is shadowing
Right.
more powerful than God?
No.
Because touch with people's faith, their understanding
Yeah.
becomes greater.
And see, you're illustrating the quandary that is in. Why don't they get it even though they got it? And because they got all this power, they've been doing these things, it's all there. Some of the people get it because they bring their sick to him. They get it. But sometimes the ones closest to him don't. And when you figure out that question, then you'll figure out why we still don't get it sometimes. Because anytime I lose sleep because I'm overly anxious, it says I don't get it, right? Anytime I'm fearful, it's because I don't get it. Anytime I'm not willing to forgive or embittered towards someone, it's because I don't get it, right? And so we are saying, suffer the same malady. It's just, generations removed. Yes?
I was just gonna say that, we live under physical laws.
Right.
And we are limited, we're just very, very limited because we don't have the power to supersede natural law.
That's right.
And I think it's a huge struggle that we have because, we're weird, our DNA, everything is fit into the natural laws. And we don't know, that's what I think it is with these fellas. He was supernatural.
Well, that's right.
And to grasp that
Yeah.
is for any finite human being, it's always going to be a struggle.
And that's why, yes, and we're bound by the physical, so we think, and that's why even though we live in the physical or exist, we have to live in the spiritual. And that's our series on Sunday morning. We have to get out of the physical and start thinking spiritual in all things. It's a challenge. All right. Obviously, this hits our nerve or hits home with us because it's all of our struggle. It's moving from the head to the heart. And sometimes it's just saying, okay, God, I give up. I'm yours. I'm going to trust you. I'm just done trying to fix it all myself. And that's when things start working. It's just that simple. But it's that hard. All right. So we have time to introduce the next subject, and it's a total different change of subject. So just close your mind to what we just said, and let's move to the next chapter, okay? Not close your mind, but let's turn the chapter, all right? And we're going to introduce it by talking about the law of Moses, okay? Because really it has the same subject because it's dealing with the heart. Because these issues of faith are dealing with the heart, aren't they? And now the Pharisees are going to come and challenge Jesus once again. And it's going to be over something simple as not washing your hands before you eat. Not for hygiene, but for spiritual cleanliness, as they're going to call it. And so Jesus is going to really take them to task on this, calling them hypocrites, invalidating the work of God, and all their worship, their whole life is vain. And they're the icons of righteousness and worship in the society in which they live. And Jesus just blasts them and said, it's all done in vain. In other words, it's worthless. All this work, all this piety that you've betrayed is worthless. And he's going to tell us why. So if we can get this, it's really, 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 really going to help us. But we have to do a little background. When we talk about the law of Moses, it was given to the Jews by God, right? It's a covenant between God and the people written on tablets of stone. It wasn't just 10 commandments, but there was the whole exhaustive list of commandments that are given through Exodus 20 through Exodus 24. And of course, it was a covenant which married God to the people, and the people said 3 times, all the Lord has said, we will do. They're willing to agree to the terms of this covenant. And God said, with the covenant's a blessing and a curse. You obey it, it's for your good, your success, your blessing, your survival. If you break the covenant, just like a marriage covenant, I will send you away and divorce you. And then when you're removed from my cloak of protection, bad things are going to happen. It's not because I'm doing it, it's because you've forsaken me, and now I'm letting you go because that's what you want. And so we see that they had this, and when you enumerate these commandments, they like to do it, and there are some debate about how many there are, but they basically come up with 613 commandments. Now, why would you want to number them? That's just a thought I want you to think about, okay? You would number them because it starts moving towards, the Pharisaical way of approaching religion. It's not about having God live in your heart. It's about, all right, here's a bunch of laws, I got to do them so I can be right. It's more about law keeping rather than loving God. All right? They broke them down into 365 don'ts and 248 do's. Now, it's interesting. If you go through the scripture, you can break them down that way. Don't murder, right? That's in the 365. Leave part of your fields unharvested for the poor so they can go and harvest them. That's a do, right? So when you get them up, that's 613, if I got it right, okay? Now, 613, one of them was keep the Sabbath day holy. Is that a do or a don't? It's a do, but it's full of don'ts. What are some of the don'ts in order to keep the Sabbath day holy? A do. Don't what? Don't start a fire. Don't work. All right? Make your meals the night before. So there's some do's and don'ts that are attached to this single commandment, keep the Sabbath day holy. So, all right, okay, we're all good on that. And there were several laws of cleanliness that were part of the do's and don'ts that God ordained to keep people, teach people about being holy and unholy. That's the purpose of them. For example, if you touched a dead body, you were ceremonially unclean. You could go to the temple until you went through a process of purifying yourself, okay? There's certain skin infections, leprosy, that disqualified you from worshiping God. A lady in her menstrual cycle was unclean for that period until she purified herself afterwards. So there were several things like that. Unclean foods would make you impure. So we see that. Now, here's what the Jews did. And again, I've referred to this before, but the motive might have started off with good intentions, but it's ripe with problems. They said, okay, we got these 613 laws. We want to build a fence around them so we don't even come close to breaking them. All right? We want to be so pure and be so protected that we're going to expand on what God said so you don't even get close to breaking what he said to do or don't do. And so they had what's called halakha, the path that one walks, a series of laws that included the 613, but many laws that expounded on them. Okay? For example, breaking the Sabbath. You're not supposed to work. That's in the 613. So to protect you from even getting close to working, you were not allowed to pick up a tool of work like a hammer or a sickle to cut the wheat. Anything associated with work you weren't allowed to touch, or else you have broken this law. No, whoa, whoa, whoa. Have you broken the Sabbath by picking it up? No, but they said you've crossed, you come too close, and we don't want you to even be tempted or let other people see you do that, think that it might be okay, so don't even pick it up. And they said it was binding as the law that God spoke himself. Now, when you break the Sabbath law, what was the punishment? Death. They said, okay, if you pick up a hammer, even though it's just as binding, we won't kill you, but we'll whip you. And so they had other ones associated. That's just one example. You could sort beans from raisins, but not raisins from beans. He said, what's that got to do with it? There are all sorts of things. And they just piled them on, again, to keep you away. Now, I know we don't do that, ever. I know we don't do it. All right. I'll just use it. We're out of time. So we'll pick this up next week. Because they come and they see their disciples eating bread with impure, unwashed hands. And if you look in the Bible, you'll see nothing about eating with unwashed hands. It was not part of the 613. It was part of their added traditions. So that's going to set up our study next week. Come back. Thank you very much.